Hello, my name is Riaz Sidi, and I have the pleasure to moderate today's session, Sell Like a Marketer. Our panel is comprised of two highly esteemed professionals in the tech marketing space who are going to share their insights on sales and marketing in the current environment. Before I introduce our guest today, you'll see we have a live poll on the screen. So here's the question from a marketing perspective. And from a marketing perspective, what issues are you struggling with the most? So please select your answer from the following: lead generation, nurture, conversion, or slow pipeline. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to answer the poll. So go ahead and do that. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel for today. So first, I would like to introduce Hana Abaza, Director of Marketing at Shopify Plus. Hana is all about marketing, growth, tech, and startups. She has a knack for communicating inspired tech solutions to mainstream audiences, resulting in more users and higher conversion rates across the board. Welcome, Hana.
Hey, everyone.
Great. Dev Basu is CEO of Powered by Search. His company helps B2B SaaS companies scale demand generation that drives demos, trials, and grows MRR. Thanks for joining today, Dev.
Great to be here.
Awesome. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time to click the answer that best reflects what you're struggling with most in marketing. So let's have a look at the poll here. We can see that 38% of our audience today has selected lead generation, which is also tied with conversion at 38%. And then we have nurture and slow pipeline. So it looks like the standout answers are lead gen and conversion. So really the first question today is, what conclusions can we draw from the results of this poll? And I'll start with Dev.
Yeah, well, I think the writing's kind of on the wall with this because, pipeline's been slowing down. And part of the challenge with conversion is with anything in SaaS, you have to answer three questions, like why buy now, why buy anything, and why buy you? So it's not surprising that a lot of people who are attending this event right now are struggling with conversion, because a lot of that why buy now component is at risk. It's about, is this now the right time given risk in the market? And then lead generation, likewise, it's a little bit of a wait and see type of game. And we've certainly seen that going into COVID and the sort of the early part of the year. And now it's kind of a rebound period, but not everybody's caught up. There's a kind of an inertia that's caused some lull. And as a result of that, if you don't get your plans in order for a Q4, you might just end up seeing more of the same.
Mm-hmm. Hana, how about yourself? What do you think about the poll with lead gen and conversion being the biggest struggle?
Yeah, I mean, I think in addition to everything Deb said, and I think those are really great points. I'm actually what I'm curious about, and I suspect that if we were to do this poll pre-COVID, we'd probably see really similar responses, to be perfectly honest, right? And I think part of that is that lead gen and conversion in SaaS, but not just in SaaS. I mean, we see this in e-commerce, at Shopify, we see this across the board. It's harder than it's ever been before, right? And I think when I see that, I think those are almost tactical representations of deeper questions we need to ask around why. Why is lead gen slow? Is it pandemic driven, where your product is really more of a nice to have right now and it's not a must have? So it's like the first thing that gets put on the back burner. It's a possibility. But there are a whole host of reasons. So when I see those, my default is to kind of do the 5 whys and start to dig in a little bit further into why are we seeing lower lead flow, and why are we seeing lower conversion? And I think, that's the information that I think is really tough to get at when you're taking a look at what's actually coming into your funnel and trying to parse like what's really high intent versus what's not, and then the cause of that I think is a really big challenge. So I'm not actually surprised at all to see those results. I think this is probably a really opportune time to revisit the fundamentals. And I feel like I sound a little bit like a broken record because, whether I'm doing a talk like this or a panel or even talking to like our own teams, I find I am constantly asking 101 questions, not because, people aren't smart and they don't know this stuff, because it's really easy to gloss over the basic questions that you actually really do need to go back and revisit in a lot of cases. Like, who are we actually targeting? Like, does this make sense for them? Are we positioned properly? Positioning is a really big one. So I think, yeah, not surprised, but also the reasons why are probably more varied now than they ever have been before because, well, COVID.
No, absolutely. That totally makes sense. And in terms of digging a little bit deeper, looking at analytics and asking the why, what are some of the, so for example, if conversion and lead generation are some of the challenges and we're going to dig deeper, what are some of the, maybe the analytics or kind of metrics that we might look at or in order to kind of assess what we can do to improve that part of the funnel?
Yeah.
Maybe I could start with you.
Yeah, I think Deb and I are both like, who's gonna jump in first? So, I mean, from my perspective, it really depends on your business model, right? So that's gonna look different if you're, more small business and your funnel's more like a B2C type funnel where it's a free trial, it's an upgrade, and your funnel is a lot lighter lift than if you're super up market and you have a sales team and it's high touch and it's demand generation. So I think the metrics will be a little bit different. I think at a high level though, it's the SaaS metrics that we all look at and that we all know on a regular basis. I think what becomes interesting is taking a look by source and by channel and seeing, hey, have there been any changes there? And particularly post-COVID, right? And particularly because our environment and landscape has changed. But then asking the question of like, are there any bright spots? Are there areas where I can overinvest and actually just like kill a bunch of things? And are there areas where we just need to actually step back, at least from a lead gen standpoint? I'll pause there. I think conversion's super different, but I don't know, Dev, what's your take?
And I agree exactly what you're saying over there as well. And we work with clients anywhere between, $1,200 and $99 a month type of product on the low end, up to selling 100K ACV, annual contract value plus products. And the sales cycles are completely different versus product led versus on demo. One thing that maybe to add to that is often marketers tend to think about analytics somewhat myopically, like you go into your mix panel or your Google Analytics or Amplitude, for example. Part of analytics is qualitative as well. And so the two ways that are important to kind of get into there is go talk to your sales teams, go talk to your customer success people, understand why customers are churning or why they're not converting as well. Mm-hmm. And one way to operationalize this and make this even better is actually in deploying voice of customer polls on your website. So if you ever seen one of those little micro surveys that pop up, it doesn't ask you for your name or email address, simply asks you for feedback on whether the page was useful or not, or why you didn't convert today. What are you looking for? Are you just in research mode? Are you stumbling into something? Are you actively comparing between options to see what might be able to help you as a customer in that situation? Those can glean. You can glean just so many insights from doing something like that and marrying that with your source data and just data that you can get within a standard analytics type of platform. And the two together can really help you improve your messaging. I think we're at the point now in September where hopefully most companies have moved from having a message like they did back in January or February, and they're no longer feeling tone deaf in the way that they're approaching the market. Mm-hmm. But they still might be struggling to kind of like have a beige message. And so that's something we saw earlier on this summer, where what message will resonate without being seen as being prickly or too pointy, for example. I think now is the time to look at where customers are at, meet them where they're at, understand their frustrations and challenges, and then reflect messaging to help them, to help guide them through this, basically. So just in addition to the quantitative side, adding some voice of customer can really help.
I totally agree with that. And actually, part of what you said, I think really highlights the importance of really fast feedback loops, right? Mm-hmm. And early indicators. So, I mean, just one example of this, and again, this is super dependent on your funnel and your business model, and like whether or not you have a sales team changes the dynamic completely. But if you're super high up on the B2B side of the spectrum, you can't wait until a customer converts. It takes too long, right? You can't optimize like a channel strategy or a paid strategy based on like customer conversion. Eventually, over time, yes, you'll be able to look at that data. But what you need to start to develop is really smart early indicators that are almost like a little bit of a best guess, and those evolve and improve over time. But it's really about how do you get that fast feedback loop so that you can adjust as needed. I think that's super important. I think voice of customer does that for you as well.
Absolutely. Great answers from both. So in terms of, so our topic today is all about kind of sell like a marketer. And we've talked a little bit about feedback loops that we can get from insights on our website and applying that towards our campaigns. In terms of the sales and market, because sales and marketing are increasingly becoming more and more blurred, especially in SaaS. So what are some traits that SaaS salespeople can adopt from marketers?
That's a good one.
Dev, do you want to go ahead and answer that one, please?
Yeah, sure. So we deal with a lot of clients who have a demo-based model. So they're supported. They've gone into channel sales and scaled up to 10 million plus. And obviously those guys are struggling a bit now with trade shows having kind of disappeared in person and doing a lot more of a virtual format like this. One thing that we notice when we're reviewing demo calls, if you're using Chorus or Gong.io or Refract or any of those types of things, one of the things we do as marketers is actually get in the habit of reviewing what demo calls actually look like, what product walkthroughs basically look like. The nicest thing that we see over there, and sort of the highlight, if you will, the bright spot, is that the one thing that salespeople can do that marketers can't do very well is adapt to the conversation. It's basically like personalization at scale, because humans can adapt to the conversation, websites typically cannot. So there's something for marketers to learn from salespeople over there. On the flip side, there's a lot of assumptive type of behavior in sales, which marketing typically doesn't do quite as much, in the sense that because our content and our ads and whatnot still largely tends to be quite static, even though I don't think as an industry, people want to be there. They want to evolve and become more dynamic and more personalized. One thing that marketing does well is it allows every kind of checkbox, every call to action, every form is essentially a way for getting permission to move to the next step. And often what we see in demo-based environments is not enough of that to be able to actually understand where the customer is at, what's important for them to look at today, what's the key problem that they're trying to solve, and then pivoting, having had that information. And that's something that marketing is very good at, because we all know that if you just send somebody from an ad directly to a demo, if they've never basically seen the SaaS brand in this case, they don't know you, they don't like you or trust you, guess what? They'll bounce, right? And so I think there's an assumption that when you get somebody on a sales call, you already know what their problems are and you're going to walk them through the product walkthrough. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to step back and wait for a little bit and see, what are we trying to achieve over here? What would be an ideal outcome for you? And then tailor the conversation that way.
Oh my God, you bring up so many great points. I also am like restraining myself from going on a rant about both marketing and sales teams because I feel like they both have like work to do and blind spots. So I think, so a couple of things on that. On the sales side of things, I think sales reps, and I think I paint this picture broadly. I also know sales reps that are like absolutely fantastic and don't do this, but there's a really strong recency effect with sales reps, and even a lot of like biases based on like one-off conversations that really come into play and guide their behavior, which can be super duper problematic. At the same time, what I would say is like, there's a lot marketing can learn from sales, particularly like those bright spot reps that are doing like killing their quota when other people aren't. Like that is who you want to zero in on if you are a marketer, and you want to zero in on how they're talking about the product, how they're prospecting, if they're prospecting, how they're qualifying leads, if they're doing another layer of qualification, like all of that stuff. But I think what often happens is a sales rep's opinion on whether a lead is good or bad, or whether a certain message works, is often based on the last like 3 phone calls that they had, right? Not necessarily accurate or reflective of maybe even your target demographic. So I would say on the sales side, I would watch for that, and really train reps to sort of step back and take sort of a longer term view of it. I think the other piece is it's really easy, again, based on that, for reps to fall into patterns and behaviors based on like really wild assumptions and really wild biases. And just to give you a really concrete example of that, in a past life, previous sales team, we were hearing over and over from sales reps that Google AdWords don't convert. Leads from Google Ads don't convert. And like, when I first heard that, I was like, what? Like, we're spending so much money on Google Ads. Like, what do you mean they don't convert? So, I mean, we started looking into the data, right? And when we started looking into the data, what we realized is like, okay, Google Ads aren't necessarily converting. Objectively, from like a lead scoring, lead qualification standpoint, they're not like necessarily that different from other sources. So what's going on here? Well, it turns out reps weren't following up on them, because at some point, one rep was like, hey, I've been working these leads, they're not that good. And then you know what happens when one sales rep says a thing? It like spreads like wildfire, right? And then all of the sales reps are like, oh, cool, great insight, thanks. I won't follow up on those leads. So, I mean, like those are things that you have to really watch for if you're running a sales team, I think. And it's all well-intentioned, but I mean, how did we fix that? Well, we worked with the sales leaders. We actually relabeled the field so they couldn't see it was from Google Ads. And then they started following up on them, and then they converted at the same rate as like ads coming in from other channels. So I think that like all of us as humans want to believe that our gut is more right than like data science in some cases. And again, it's not all based on data. There's absolutely an element of judgment when it comes down to it. But I think those are some important elements to sort of keep.
Yeah, totally. There's like this inherent kind of tension between sales and marketing. I think that's very clear. And companies that do well, they're able to kind of bind those a little bit better. So for some of the maybe SaaS founders or companies that are, or the viewers today that have a sales and marketing team, what are some things that they can do to kind of bridge that gap a little bit better so that they don't run into that situation where marketing's handing over leads that aren't being followed up on, or sales isn't giving back like a feedback loop? Hannah, let's start with you on that.
So I think a shared objective, like a shared target, is like super key, and not just revenue, like something further upstream than that is a shared objective, is key, right? And meaning the marketing and sales leaders have to work super closely. The other thing I would say is it does depend a little bit on your model in terms of like if sales is the tip of the spear versus like marketing being like the main driver. A lot of SaaS companies kind of fall in between, where they have like a strong inbound funnel, but they also have like a large accounts team where it's mostly sales driven, and then maybe even like a self sign up free trial kind of thing. So, but a shared objective, I think, does wonders. And then I think the last piece I would say, and then Deb, I'm super curious to hear your perspective, is a little bit of tension isn't a bad thing. So like, I don't think we should strive for this artificial harmony, right? I think actually having some of that tension is actually really good and really healthy in a healthy way, of course.
Like a check and balance almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points. And I'd say like one very tactical thing that we've seen work quite well with our clients is simply getting a meeting in the books where sales teams work with marketing teams, and it's a show and tell session effectively. So we're reviewing last 2 weeks leads. Talk to us about let's go call by call and understand who is a prospect, how did it go, where do they come from. If it's product led and you're essentially identifying like a whale account in your product, they came and signed up for free. How did that lead scoring work? How did the message go over to the rep to reach out? That's part of marketing's job. How soon did the rep respond in reaching out? What was the quality of their reach out? Did they just go do an email? Or did they go a bit further and do some sort of like a video-based outreach? These are qualitative insights you cannot capture in a dashboard. And so having the sync meetings is where I think founders or marketing and sales leaders need to enable, like design that basically to happen. And then, you create the model, and then magic basically just happens by bringing people together and saying, look, the shared objective is sales folks, teach the marketing people what you're, learning down the funnel. Marketing folks, when you hear the salespeople say that, the leads are unqualified or they're not ready to move as fast, go do that, exactly what Hannah said, the 5 whys, right? Like why is that? What about, them not wanting to move faster? Why is that happening? And what do you mean by unqualified, right? As you dig deeper, that's when you really understand where the golden nuggets really are.
I mean, that's actually, I think, a great question is, what do you mean by unqualified? Because I mean, at the highest level, there's 3 things, right? It's fit, it's engagement, and it's intent. It's those 3 things, right? So either they don't fit from a company profile perspective, they're not at all engaged with you, they don't know who you are, and or maybe they are engaged with you, but they have 0 intent to buy because they can't for whatever reason. You need to drill into that, because just because a lead is not ready to buy right now doesn't mean it's a bad lead. It just means that they're not ready to buy right now, right?
Yeah. I'd add to that, it's probably important for sales teams to understand like what the levers are that marketing can control as well. Yeah. So if you can educate sales teams to say, look, marketing at a broad level controls targeting. So who are we after? Messaging, what do we say to them? And budgeting, like how much do we want to allocate to different buckets of people to go get them, whether that's earned, owned, or paid, right? And simply applying a little bit of insight and saying, look, the targeting was a little off. They really had a need, but they were too small for us. Okay, now the marketing team has something specific to go work on. We're going to improve the targeting. Oh, the messaging was really off. They wanted X and we sold them Y. Okay, we can work on that too. So giving that level of higher quality feedback, which more specificity can go, it can go a long range basically, and getting these 2 teams to work better together.
Definitely.
And I think what I'm taking out of both of your answers is really that there needs to be more of a focus on quality and qualitative analytics instead of just pure quantitative stats. And I think that's super important, because I know a lot of companies are so focused on how many outbound calls they're making, how many impressions they're serving, those types of metrics, which are important, but ultimately it's kind of sifting through to find those golden nuggets and then going deep with those and making sure that sales and marketing are aligned on it. So great answers from both sides. Okay, let's switch up gears a little bit here. I gotta talk about the pandemic a little bit, of course. So
fair.
Right, of course, So how has SaaS sales and marketing changed, would you say, as a result of the pandemic? Is there more of an onus on marketing, or is there more of, like what are some of the sensitivities around prospecting? Because, sometimes sales might outreach to an industry or a company that might be a little bit more impacted. So are there any kind of things that we need to consider in terms of how to approach sales and marketing as a result of the pandemic? Hannah, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good question. I hate this because it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but I think it's highly dependent on the industry that you're in. I think more than ever, marketing and sales have to be aligned from a messaging standpoint, and like almost like the go, no go accounts, customers, industries, like whatever it might be. But I think like structurally, I don't think this has changed how SaaS works from a growth or commercial perspective necessarily. I think what it's changed is potentially how you position your product, how you message your product. To your point, the sensitivities around prospecting and outreach. And is this a company that is super struggling and going to go bankrupt really soon, right? Or is this a company that is in an industry that is actually really thriving during the pandemic? So I think those are all questions that actually marketing and sales need to answer together, and more than just marketing and sales. I mean, I think this is also your CS team. This is, I think, a wholesale look at and shift potentially of like your company strategy, and then that's going to guide the marketing and sales piece.
For sure. Dev?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I mean, we see this sort of 80-20 rule of like 20% of SaaS companies really took off. Shopify, of course, being one of them, and all the associated ecosystem of apps basically as well. Shout out to one of our clients, Carthook, for who's part of the Shopify ecosystem. Yay. And post-purchase upsells. They do a really good job. So they took off. But then if you're part of the 80% that did get impacted in some way, a lot of it has to do with this wrapper of how you position your messaging. So for example, giving more grace in terms of both what you're willing to offer and your product, some of the leeway you have to get deals done and across the line, and then having a general sensitivity of you never know what kind of battle your prospect is going through, and being able to just say, before we're chasing the sale or the sign up or the trial or the demo, what can we do to basically open up our arms a little bit to welcome in and help the people that we're intended to serve, and in each circumstance, so really coming from a place of service. I know that sounds probably a bit fluffy, but when you really just start internalizing it, then you're like, how do we want to help people? Does our messaging actually demonstrate that? Does our funnel actually demonstrate that? Does the remarketing ads we're using demonstrate that as well? One of the things we did early on was said, if you're not going to go prospect hard right now, just educate, build up large audience pools, like people who are audiences that you can then showcase a message to after. And this is the entire idea that it's not a buy, no buy decision. It's really more of a buy now or buy later. And if it is a buy later, and it's a sense of timing being an issue, just being able to have those people to send messages to afterwards, whether that's on an email list or a remarketing pool, is very important to be able to have that. I mean, if you have that right now, you're in a great position. If not, the next best time to start is right now.
Right. Okay. Oh, I feel like we're just getting into it. And I have so many
I know, flew by.
At the top of the hour. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll have Q&A in the chat room here. So you're both in B2B environments. How have you helped your customers to evolve, would you say, in the current environment with Shopify Plus and Powered by Search? Have you changed your offering or platform at all as a result, Dev?
Our platform hasn't changed, and what we offer hasn't either. Well, the depth of it probably has. So primarily our clients come to us because they've got a problem with visibility, engagement, or conversion. The new thing that they came to us with was messaging. And they were like, listen, we're not just talking about ads anymore. We literally don't know how to position ourselves during the pandemic. So we started doing webinars and client education around messaging pivots, basically. And our core thesis is that, like, all SaaS basically sells speed, certainty, or insight. In boom times and bust times, the messaging is completely different, even though your product fundamentally doesn't end up changing. So we just kind of help clients figure out what to say, what product to bring to the market, how to pivot their offers. And that really positioned them for success. Now we're really looking at more of a relaunch and how to end Q4 really strong.
Great. Hannah?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for a really long time about what we did at Shopify. I think at a high level, almost immediately after the pandemic, after, we checked on our people and made sure that, the teams and everybody else was doing as well as they could be doing at that time. We went through a very, very rapid start, stop, continue across Shopify, across all of our product lines, and really shifted. And for some product lines, there was a bigger shift. For some, they actually continued to work on the stuff they were working on, but really prioritized all of the things that we could accelerate and ship immediately that would help our customers right now. So, for example, buy online, pick up in store became huge, right? Curbside pickup, gift cards for small businesses so that they could keep cash flow going. On the Shopify Plus side, we started seeing inbound, these huge legacy retailers that overnight completely had to redesign their business because they had zero e-commerce and they needed to do it super quick. Same with CPGs. So I think we were in a unique scenario being in e-commerce, and we made some pretty drastic shifts, and we're still talking about how do we help merchants. I think it's not over yet.
Right. Well, I don't think it's a secret the explosive growth of Shopify over the last few months. So it's exciting to see, and we're looking forward to more growth with Shopify and Powered by Search. Great. So the tips we heard today were great. So thank you so much, Hannah and Dev, for joining us today. I'm really sad that I have to cut it at this point because I could listen to the nuggets that you guys have delivered for quite a while, actually. So we'll have to continue this conversation for sure. So let me ask, where can our viewers to learn more about you, Hannah?
I mean, I'm on all of the things. Hit me up on Twitter. I don't know, LinkedIn. I think my email's somewhere on the interwebs if you really want to get scrappy and look for it.
Yeah, you can go on the platform, Swapcard platform, and connect with Hannah on there. And Dev, how about yourself?
Yeah, find me on Twitter. It's just at Dev Basu, or drop by the Powered by Search blog. It's just poweredbysearch.com and find our blog over there. We have a bunch of SaaS marketing insights we blog about and share our playbooks there. But otherwise, I'm also on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there if that's your channel of choice.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference. We really appreciated you sharing your insights on Sell Like a Marketer. And we look forward to all the best for you both in the near future.
Thanks very much.
Have a great day, okay?
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.